Wait, you're surprised by any of this? You're really going to sit here and tell me you're shocked as we kick it off on a Friday morning that Laura Kelly, the governor of Kansas, in the wake of this tragedy with this plane crash on Wednesday night, wasn't blowing you out of the water with massive amounts of conjecture, with huge personality? That's not who she is. And by the way, that's A-OK. Good morning. Glad you're wrapping up the week with us on KCMO 95.7 FM. So yesterday afternoon, Laura Kelly, governor of Kansas, was down in Wichita with their mayor, Lily Wu, in the wake of Wednesday night's tragedy that has left 67 people dead in the Potomac River. And I've got a couple of sound bites here from the governor of Kansas in the wake of that press conference yesterday afternoon. And I don't know what you expected if you've lived in this state for any period of time. This is who Laura Kelly is. And by the way, there are plenty of things I disagree with Laura Kelly on, but her approach during a tragedy is not going to be one of them. This is her personality, and there's not much of it there. And in this case, that's okay.
The other thing we would like is American Airlines is responsible for notifying the families of the folks who perished in this plane crash. They would like it very much if you think you might know somebody, if you think a friend of yours, a family member, or someone else was on that plane, please contact American Airlines, and let me give you their number. It is 1-800-679-8215.
So that was Laura Kelly. She only spoke for a couple of minutes during this 30-minute press conference yesterday, and she was Laura Kelly. I mean, there's a lot of people I had texting me during the press conference being like, could you believe, oh my gosh, where's the leadership? That was weak. And it was mostly Republicans. And I'm like, guys, she kicked your butt twice in 2 straight elections. Maybe sit this one out. All right. And I say that as somebody who has never voted for Laura Kelly. But you think you're owning her by saying she didn't live up to the moment. Well, you couldn't beat her. What's that say about you then? It's been my whole tenure here in Kansas City, more or less. I guess I walked in with Governor Collier for a few months, but I've seen her win 2 straight elections. So what's that say? Now, we are starting to get some more information. The National Transportation Safety Board has recovered critical evidence that could piece together the final moments before Wednesday's deadly midair collision. In a statement to Fox News, the agency said the cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder from American Airlines Flight 5342 has been found by NTSB investigators. So now it is going to the labs for evaluation. So we will get more information on what happened in the moments leading up to that tragedy 2 nights ago right over the Potomac. And as soon as, obviously, that information is out there, well, you're going to know about it, because you got to give this new administration this much. They are all about transparency, at least out of the gates. That can change over time, but I'll give them credit where it's due. Out of the gates, they are all about that transparency, and that's a good thing. Now, the bad side of that, the bad thing is part of what we saw yesterday in the press conference from the president. It harkened back to, I got like PTSD watching it. I don't know about you. And my sore throat is not from yelling at the television yesterday. It's from having 3 sick little kids at home. But it could have been from yelling at the TV yesterday, because I was certainly doing that while the president was doing his press conference. And I'm watching him and I'm saying to myself, okay, this guy is really good at actually showing empathy. One thing that his critics will never give him credit for is actually showing empathy in a pretty effective way. He showed it 2 days ago with Laken Riley's mother. But to me, yesterday is about empathy. Yesterday is about, hey, we're gathering facts. We'll get them to you when we have them. And right now we are mourning with the 67 lost lives their families, and their friends in Kansas, in D.C., and all over the country. And that's it. You get in and you get out. But yesterday was also a reminder that you really can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Mr. President, on DEI and the claims that you've made, are you saying this crash was somehow caused and the result of diversity hiring? And what evidence have you seen to support these claims?
It just could have been. We have a high standard. We've had a much higher standard than anybody else. And there are things where you have to go by brain power. You have to go by psychological quality. And psychological quality is a very important element of it. These are various very powerful tests that we put to use, and they were terminated by Biden. And Biden went by a standard that's the exact opposite. So we don't know.
Now, let me say this. All hiring in America should be merit-based. I don't care, and no American should care what your color is, what your gender is, what your sexual orientation is. None of that should matter. All hiring in America should be merit-based. The idea of DEI as a policy, I believe, is an inherently racist policy. If you are picking somebody for a job specifically because of their gender, because of their race, well, you're doing exactly what you claim you're not doing. You're being racist, sexist in some way, right? I mean, that's just, I don't believe that's debatable. That being said, is yesterday the moment for it when families are still waiting to hear whether or not they lost their loved ones? I don't believe it is, especially when we cannot sit here right now and point to DEI as the reason for anything happening on Wednesday night. Now, maybe it comes out that somebody in air traffic control was not really qualified for a position and got a job to fill some quota. Maybe that comes out, in which case, then the narrative has legs. But you heard from the president yesterday when he said, well, it could have been. And he also let the reporter get away with something very critical there. The reporter asked him, are you saying diversity hiring had something to do with this? Diversity hiring is not the same as a DEI mentality in your entire hiring process. See, they're making it seem, and they're implying in the way the question is framed, are you suggesting that we can blame a minority and their minority status for this? And Trump's got to call out the way the question is framed if he's going to go down this road. Because it was a very disingenuous way to frame the question. And the reporter got away with it. And then Trump comes on the back end and he said, well, I don't really know. It could have been. Okay, well, you're saying you don't know. So we have 67 dead people. Their families don't even know they're dead yet. We don't have really any information on what just happened and why it happened. Heck, the NTSB is just getting the voice and data recorders. That just happened last night, which was hours after the press conference took place. If it turns out that some type of hiring initiative resulted in people who are not qualified to do the jobs, then, all right, Pandora's box is open. Let's have the conversation. But we're not there yet. And to use an analogy that I think works out perfectly here, we all know that Joe Biden's border policies the last 4 years were horrendous. Right? And there was a story that we've all been tracking in the news. The Laken Riley story led to the Laken Riley Act that just passed this past week that has much more stringent policies against people who are here illegally and then commit crimes. Just like the guy who ended up killing Laken Riley on a running trail at the University of Georgia. If Laken Riley had died or gotten killed, and people had jumped to the conclusion that it was by an illegal immigrant, and it turned out that it wasn't, boy, you would have looked like a horse's rear end, wouldn't you? Now, it did turn out that way, obviously, and that's what made it really a massive example of failures by the prior administration on border policy. But if people had been screaming about border policy before knowing whether or not the person who committed the crime was here illegally, it wouldn't have worked. And you would have looked like a fool making the case that this is all about bad border policy. And then it's like, whoops, it's an American citizen. Oh, well, the border's still wide open. It would have been like a boy who cried wolf moment. And regardless, you're 18 hours into this thing. The investigation is really just starting. Yesterday should have been about one thing and one thing only, and that is empathy for families whose loved ones have been lost here in Kansas, in D.C., and around the country, especially when you're good at it, which President Trump happens to be. And it was a massively blown opportunity. I'm glad I got this on the text line, which is 913-408-7957. Pete, as an air traffic controller in Kansas City, I agree that yesterday wasn't the best time to make the statements about DEI by President Trump. However, we as air traffic controllers have been saying for years that due to the hiring and training changes, which are not merit-based and nearly impossible to fail as a trainee anymore, the FAA has been on a path straight for disaster. Those are all fair criticisms to make, and those conversations have been had on and off for years, and there's no doubt in my mind that those are things that are going to be focused on and should be focused on in the days, weeks, and months ahead. Yesterday wasn't the time for it. People are literally waiting with bated breath to find out if their loved one is dead. That time will come. There's no doubt about it. That time will come. But when you're sitting there and you're waiting to find out whether or not your child, your parent, your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle is alive, I don't want to hear about DEI training and its failures, even if I agree that it's a failure.
I think that's job one in everyone's mind. Even I know I don't have a relative, but I might know someone or know someone who knew something. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So we're all on pins. That's the main thing I want to know. So I have been a little frustrated with pieces of information that come out right now, but maybe that's because that's the one thing I want to know. I'm not looking for these other things, particularly a politicized angle on it.
No one is right now. Mike, go ahead. You're on KCMO in Kansas City. What's up, big guy?
Okay, the air traffic controllers are understaffed, especially there in that particular airport. The air traffic controller that usually handles helicopters was also handling the light aircraft, private aircraft, and it was overworked. And they had been since last year. You can't get white people hired by the FAA because that prior FAA administrator in there did not want to hire whites. They wanted to hire
Mike, you're telling me not a single white person was hired by the FAA? I mean, come on. I understand.
I'm not saying, listen,
that's what you
just.
just.
Let me finish.
Okay,
Go
ahead.
Finish.
Mike.
May I finish? He went out. He made a statement. Look it up on the internet where he says he's wanting to get diversity, and their priority is going to be putting diversity in the FAA. And because of that, and you can look this up too, there have been white people that have come out, qualified people that have not been allowed to become traffic controllers.
You're missing the point. You're missing the point. You're missing the point, Mike.
Very similar to the situation in California where you had white firefighters that were
all
being
right,
hired.
Mike, you're missing the point. Was yesterday the time to be debating DEI? Yes or no?
The reporter brought it.
Yes or no?
I don't think it was.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Thank you. That's good. I don't think it was. That's the question. You're debating something else with yourself that you've made up in your own mind. My question is timing. That's my only question right now. The timing and the leadership in that moment, the empathy that needs to be on display when the entire nation is looking at you and looking to you in that moment. That's the question. That's it. All those things that you've just talked about, very fair to debate, very fair to have conversations on. But I will also add that while, yes, reports came out yesterday that when it comes to being understaffed at Reagan Airport in particular, this air traffic controller on Wednesday night was doing the job of two people. That was reported yesterday, to your point. That being said, what we also appear to know as of right now is that the helicopter was informed to keep an eye out for this plane. The helicopter then appears to say, or at least somehow report back, I've got the plane in my sights. What is believed to have happened right now is that they had the wrong plane in their sights, and it was a plane that was departing and taking off, not the plane that was coming in and landing. So while, yes, there are shortages, yes, there appear to be major hiring issues with how not just the FAA does its business, but all of the government does its business, all of those things can be true. But it doesn't take away from the timing and the broader points that need to be made and the conversations that need to be had. That's what I'm saying. I'm not sitting here and arguing with you over air traffic control hiring standards. We've known the government has been derelict in its duty on hiring standards for quite some time. The question is, when do you bring them up, right? When do you say, okay, I'm going to have a plan here. I'm going to have a direct plan on how to go about doing this to make sure it makes the country look good, and it's also sensitive to the 67 people and their families. And that's where, you know and I know, legacy media in particular is going to throw everything it can at President Trump in this moment. We all know that, you know that, and I know that, right? So that's where you got to think two steps ahead. This guy has never been more popular. He was never as popular in his first term as he is right now. And the media doesn't like that. And you better be prepared for what they're going to come after you with. And yesterday, they got him. Yesterday, they started to chip away just a little bit at that popularity. And that's where you got to be thinking two steps ahead. We are getting details right now on many of the victims from the other night over the Potomac River on that American Airlines flight coming in from Wichita to Washington, D.C. These names are just coming in courtesy of Fox News. I'm seeing this right in front of me right now. Mark, could we pull up Fox News here and just see what they're reporting on some of these names as the victims are starting to be noted here in the media?
Kansas pageant. The Skating Club of Boston, remembering their young skaters and coaches who perished, including Spencer Lane, who posted this photo to his Instagram showing the wing of the American Airlines flight on the tarmac before the doomed flight took off. His two Russian-born coaches also died. Two-time Olympic medalist Nancy Kerrigan said she knew them throughout the years, and she described through tears this impact on young skaters.
Always welcoming and happy to see one another, and so just to walk in here and not see that is, I think, would be very strange for everybody that comes here.
And we'll be bringing you more about the victims of this tragic crash throughout the day.
All right, so that's Fox News right now. I'm reading some of the names here that are being reported in the last couple of minutes. Cedarville University student Grace Maxwell, mechanical engineer major, who is due to graduate next year, was on board the plane.
I will add, she was a Wichita native for sure. She had come home for the funeral of her grandfather, I believe, right? Story?
Yes, saw
and
that.
was returning back to school in the D.C. area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Police Colonel Pergentino Malabed Jr., 51 years old. Sarah Lee Best, Elizabeth Ann Keys, worked at a law firm in D.C., confirmed to be on this plane. GE Aerospace employee Vikesh Patel. Lydia, Everly, Donna, and Peter Livingston. Two parents and their daughters, aged 11 and 14, from Ashburn, Virginia, among those lost. Brielle and Justina Beyer. Brielle, 12 years old. one of the skaters who was there. We knew there were about a dozen folks who were there for the U.S. figure skating event. Andy Byer told ABC News his wife Justina and their daughter, who overcame cancer at 4 months old, my gosh, had been away for 6 days for a figure skating camp. And, you know, when you live in that world, you do a lot of traveling. So Brielle and her mother, Justina, were on that flight. Charlotte, mother of two, an incredible wife, Wendy Jo Schaefer, a passenger on that plane. Alexander Sasha Kirsanov, a Delaware skating coach on that flight. Angela Yang and Sean Kay, confirmed to be two of the child skaters also on the plane. Ryan O'Hara, the crew chief of the helicopter. He leaves behind a wife and a 1-year-old son. Andrew Eves, Chief Warrant Officer 2, was one of 3 pilots in the Black Hawk helicopter. Eves was a Central Academy graduate, grew up in the Brooksville area there in Mississippi. Asra Hussein Raza, traveling home from a work trip on that plane, 26-year-old graduate of the University of Indiana and Columbia University, had recently moved to D.C. with her husband for this consulting job. So these names are starting to filter out this morning. Spencer Lane, a skater from the Boston Skating Club, died in the crash. So as these names continue to come out, we will bring them to you here on KCMO. I'm reading this in real time. Michael Stovall and Jesse Pitcher. Stovall, 40 years old, Pitcher, 30, were on a hunting trip with friends in Kansas. Stovall was a steam fitter, and Pitcher owned a plumbing business. So as these names continue to come out, we will bring them to you here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. As always, we are streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. With that, you know, we are 9 days away from Super Bowl 59, where the Chiefs will try to do something that has never been done in NFL history, and that is win 3 straight Super Bowls. And we can now confirm to you the Fox 4 reporting from yesterday that there will be no rally if the Chiefs do win Super Bowl 59. I alluded to this on the show a couple of days ago. I couldn't share all the details at that point in time. But if you were listening closely on Tuesday morning, I guess actually that was Wednesday morning, I said, listen, this thing is going to look a lot different. I couldn't bring you all the details at that point, but you could have read between the lines and said, okay, something's going to be a lot different. There's not going to be a rally. Yesterday, Fox 4 had the full report that there will be no rally. Instead, there will be a little event at Arrowhead, followed by a parade. Here's the reporting from Fox 4.
Shooting at last Super Bowl rally that left Lisa Lopez Galvin dead and 22 others hurt. It changed how we will celebrate championships in this city. The 3P! Multiple sources confirm with Fox 4 the rallies we've seen following parades are no more. Instead, the team will have an exclusive event at Arrowhead prior to the parade. Exclusive meaning no public attendance. The city is working out logistics to have screens along the parade route so fans can watch. Players, coaches, staff, and dignitaries will leave the Truman Sports Complex and head to stage for the parade in the area of Crown Center.
Hey, ha, hoo, hey, ha, hoo, ha. Okay. Just talk to me, my man. Just talk. All right? It's what it's all about in media. Just talk to me like you would in a conversation, okay? All right. With that, that's from Fox 4 on KCMO. There will be nothing at Union Station. They will not pack in 1 million people to Union Station for a big drunken party. After last year's gunfire erupted, of course, from the gangbangers that resulted in Lisa Lopez Galvan losing her life and 24 others getting shot. It's sad to say, but they ruined it for everybody. And now what they're going to do is have a little event at Arrowhead Stadium, and then they will go from south to north on a parade route starting somewhere around Crown Center, work their way up through downtown, basically to River Market, and then end it at 6th Street. So it's going to end basically where it used to begin. It used to begin on the bridge coming out of River Market, down Grand, going downtown. Now it will go from south to north. And my thought on that, because some of you are being wise guys on the text line, and I get it. This is on the text line. Pete, gangbangers can bring their guns south to north just as well as they can bring their guns north to south. No matter where they have the celebration, no matter what they have the celebration, the gangbangers can show up. That is true. I understand that. I believe they're going south to north so they can jump back on the highway right on 70 there and scoop back to Arrowhead. It's an easier place to end because you can jump right on the highway. So that's why I believe they're going to do it that way. Yeah, can gangbangers still ruin a great event in Kansas City? Sure. But talk to anybody with KCPD, and they'll tell you it's much easier when you spread people out along a parade route than when you have 500,000 to 1 million people sitting there crowded in front of Union Station. It's a much easier thing to do from a security perspective when you spread it out along a parade route. So that's why they're going to do it that way. And how annoying is it on that Fox 4 report when you hear them say, the dignitaries are going to be down at Arrowhead. Yeah, because we all want to hear from Frank White, Quentin Lucas, and Governor Kehoe. See, I did it bipartisan. It's not about Democrat or Republican. I don't want to hear from the mayor. I don't want to hear from the county executive. They're Democrats. And I don't want to hear from Mike Kehoe, who's the governor and a Republican. I don't want to hear from any of them.
Gail McCann Beatty, anybody?
Oh, gosh. No way. No way. I mean, even Frank White's like, wouldn't want to be Gail, right? He doesn't want any part of that. Yeah. But it is just ridiculous that we have to include politicians in any of this. As if they made a tackle, they drew up a play, they drafted a player, and they'll say, well, we kind of oversee the complex. Yeah, with our money, with literally our dollars. It's our tax dollars that you guys use to oversee the sports complex.
Now, I'm seeing on utility poles all over that Chuck Nasty is having a kegger at the Double Wide in Gardner after the parade, so that might be our rally point. So I don't know if there's directions, but look for those taped up on the telephone poles.
Keep an eye on that for sure.
Yeah.
You definitely want to keep a close eye out. But my question to you is, are you in a place now where you're saying to yourself, I'm not going anyway, it doesn't matter? Are you more likely or less likely to go now that they're just doing this as a parade with no rally at the end at Union Station? 913-408-7957. It's 913-408-7957. Because I know, listen, I've heard people say no one's going to go to a parade after last year. That is nonsense. Trust me.
Yeah,
it will be packed downtown.
This town's like St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
What do you got? What kind of parade? We've had Shriners Parade here.
People showed up to the St. Patrick's Day parade last year, weeks after, like a month after the tragedy happened. You telling me no one's going to go downtown for a three-peat if it happens? 913-408-7957. I want to welcome you in on that next on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio. In the meantime, if you are heading into the weekend and dealing with some kind of plumbing issue, there is one plumbing company to reach out to here in Kansas City. theplumbingpro.com. And people ask me, Pete, why do you put that focus and emphasis on the? Well, because there are other companies who have tried to knock them off and basically beat them on Google and elsewhere with the Plumbing Pro. So you got to go to theplumbingpro.com. That's a big part of their branding. That's why I bring it up, because they've been in business since 1978 in this town. They've built 45 years of trust in the Kansas City community, and they're not going to let some fly-by-night two-bit huckster rip off that brand. They're not going to allow it. That's why the focus is on the word theplumbingpro.com. No matter how big or small, they can help you at the Plumbing Pro. They're also the Drain Pro. They can remodel your bathroom as well. The water heater replacements, the trenchless sewer pro, kitchen disposal. Heck, you need a gas line repair? They got you as well. Theplumbingpro.com is how you find them. No rally if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl. And I know a lot of you are upset by it. I am too. I don't want to give in to the thugs and the gangbangers, and that is certainly a part of what it feels like. I hate that for Kansas City. I hate that for the hundreds of thousands of you who have had nothing but good memories with friends and family during what has been, let's see, 5 rallies over the last decade? Nah, I guess 4. 1 for the Royals and 3 for the Chiefs. It would be 5 if they would have won this year and if there would be a rally. But you've got 4 in the last decade. World Series for the Royals in 15 and then 3 for the Chiefs the last few years. And now, not only is it not happening this year, I don't think it's happening ever again. Because the people I had talked to about this a couple of days ago, when I first found out about it, I asked the question, is it the city or is it the Chiefs? And what I heard from multiple sources is that it's both of them who don't want this. They didn't want the big rally. The city didn't want it for safety reasons. And let's be honest, this was a huge black eye and embarrassment for the team. I thought, as much as we all love this team, I thought players on the team kind of embarrassed themselves last year during that rally. I'm not sitting here being a prude. I'll have, a couple of beers and a couple of drinks with the rest of you. Trust me, if you've been to a Politics and a Pint, I'm happy to do it. But, I mean, Willie Gay had a bottle to his face the whole day. Kelsey was drunk off his rocker, couldn't sing Friends in Low Places to save his life. He couldn't stand up. It went too far last year. There was a weird feeling in the air, and it was borderline out of control before the shooting happened. So I think the team, and listen, this team is obviously very protective of this brand. It's worth billions of dollars. They're like, we're not bothering with this time.
Well, and I will add that the Royals had their thing in 2015, right? And that was a little bit dicey. We had the same kind of situation. So these all end basically the same way, excluding the shooting. This stage performance goes the same way where people kind of get upset. I had my kids, and, gee, they shouldn't have done that. So it's not unusual. In 2015, the Royals hadn't won since 85, and in 2019 or 2020, we hadn't won the Super Bowl since 69. Those seem appropriate times for a rally.
Yeah.
Beyond that, now we're spoiled, and it's like old news.
Yeah, that's
I'm
true,
like,
too.
What are you going to do, and how much does this cost in this city now? We talk about stuff. We go, hey, it's great. We had a Super Bowl. G2 was lucky in 3, but...
Well, I heard, and I wasn't here in 15 for the Royals. Mm-hmm. I was too busy crying in my bed about, the Mets. But in 15, I heard that because the weather was so good. And, Mark, you were there, right, with your daughter? You were there.
Yeah, it was probably high 50s.
I heard that it was the biggest of any of these rallies just because of the time of year.
I think so.
And the first one in 30 years. Mm-hmm. And there were cars, parked on the side of I-35.
Tried to set up bus systems and all, and people were just, it was chaotic because it had been so long and everybody wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah. Dwayne and my bad. We'll go to the text line, 913-408-7957. Pete, why can't they set something up that's ticketed at T-Mobile and do a lottery system? That's not a bad idea. I wondered why they didn't do that at Arrowhead. And honestly, I think it's in large part coming down to liability. Listen, you go to a Chiefs game and you see people who have had too much to drink, right? But these parades and these rallies, I don't know, it just seems like they get more out of control. And that's admittedly me looking from afar and hearing from people who are down there, because I've never been able to go because I'm here in the studio from 6 to 10. And with the way these parades go, I can't get down there. They start at 11, 12 o'clock. You literally can't get down there after 8, 9 in the morning. So I have not been able to go to one and see them firsthand. But we took a ton of calls and social media posts last year in particular with people just saying it felt completely out of control with the way people were acting. Let's go to Travis in Lenexa. He's on KCMO. What's up, Travis?
Hey, Pete, you nailed it whenever you said it was out of control before it actually got out of control, because I was at the Westin, and the Westin actually had barricaded an area off for those that were staying the night there. And within probably half an hour before the parade actually made it down to Crown Center, people were tearing down the barricade, pushing, knocking each other over, stampeding. My kids, my wife had to rush them into the hotel. So it was out of control because these are adults too. These weren't just the thug kids that were misbehaving. We had adults in their 40s that were acting like immature idiots. So yeah, it's fully understandable. It just didn't feel like a safe environment. About an hour leading into the rally, because the crowd was coming down with the parade. People were knocking each other over. climbing up on the street lights. It was out of control to begin with.
Yeah, and, it's all fun and games till people start getting hurt, man. And thank you for confirming that, Travis. And I heard a lot of stories like that, in particular last year, where there was just more pushing. There was more kind of people acting like jerks, hooligans, whatever you want to call it. And while obviously it culminates with a lady losing her life in Lisa Lopez Galvan and 22 people getting shot, do you want to bring your children into an environment like that? Whereas if you just get on the parade route, you wave, you cheer on the players when they go by, and then you disperse, you go home. And theoretically, disbursement will obviously happen over time on a parade route. Instead of everyone chasing down to get to Union Station, pushing each other to get in and see the rally, John.
Gee, I wish Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Andy Reid were on commercials so I could see more of them. Right?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, do I need to go to the parade to see them? They're all over my TV.
Yep, exactly. That's true as well. It has been a tough week, I know, for Kansas, but we're glad you're with us on a Friday morning on KCMO 95.7 FM. I'm going to get to the press conference here from yesterday coming up in a minute, but when we get callers that actually, and many of you can, add something that's either insightful, funny, smart, witty, it doesn't matter. We're going to put you on the air, and that is Don in Lenexa, a former air traffic controller on KCMO. Don, what's happening, my man?
Hey, Pete. Good to talk to you. I was retired about 10 years ago. I don't really think much has changed, and it's not a DEI problem. And in fact, I had worked with a number of women and African-American different minorities that were extremely good controllers. In fact, the best I ever worked with was an African-American guy from the East Coast. But anyway, on this accident in specific, it's something that never would have been reported if there hadn't been fire and smoke or something. And I know that from experience. I mean, my bosses would tell me, look, if you see something dangerous, if I hear about it, I'm going to examine your tapes for the last hour before that. And if I see anything wrong in those tapes, in fact, I had a guy, this guy was actually an American Airlines pilot off duty flying his little Cessna, took off the wrong direction on an active runway, and I reported it. And he wound up with zero. He's still, as far as I know, he still flies for American. I don't know. But he wound up with nothing. I had like 6 hours of computer training to do downstairs before I could go back to work. And that's the culture in the FAA. It's not just at the tower I worked at. I mean, that's at numerous towers everywhere. But I can tell you about an incident very similar to that in Camarillo, California, where I was a controller. And
I guess the point, Don, is that the near misses obviously no one finds out about, right? I mean,
they're supposed to, though, because it's a rule requiring the report of it.
No, I mean the public. The public has no idea.
Never finds out.
The public never finds out.
There's all kinds of stuff happening that you'll never know about.
Yeah. And but the point that you're making, I think, is that the FAA and leadership there should know more about the near misses, because that's how you clean up the issues that you guys are facing right now.
That's exactly right. And the staffing issue is another one. I mean, they're going to say, oh, no, we don't have a staffing problem. Well, yes, you do, because you basically, in that tower, which should have, 30, 33 controllers, something like that, they have, 19, and probably one or two of those can only work the ground control position and can't even work the whole facility.
Yeah. And that's what was reported yesterday, that the person who was running air traffic control that night, Wednesday night, was doing the job of two people.
Yeah, and that helicopter route should be the senator made a number of good points. He missed a couple of things in technical terms, but that helicopter route shouldn't be there, or you've got to make sure that those helicopters are not above 200, because that would be, even in that case, he would only miss the target by 200 feet, and we would consider that extremely hazardous if they didn't have each other in sight, or at least one of them had the other in sight. But most likely this helicopter pilot had a different jet in sight. And this is what happened to me one time, and the boss yelled and screamed at me, and I said, look, I told the guy about the traffic. I told him who to look for, and he picked out somebody else, and it was broad daylight, and the two airplanes looked different. I said, look, I told him what kind of airplane to look for. He said he had them in sight, and it's broad daylight. If he can't tell a Piper Malibu from a Cherokee, that's his problem as a pilot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Don, thank you very much for sharing that. Really appreciate it. So that is apparently part of what may have happened on Wednesday night, where air traffic control, it's been reported, alerted the helicopter to the plane. And the helicopter reports back, yeah, I got him. I see him. They were seeing the plane where, if you've seen the video, there's a plane that is taking off. That really is the main plane you see in the video. And it's believed that that is the plane that the helicopter reported back saying, yeah, I see it. I'm good. Not realizing that air traffic control was alluding to the plane that was landing coming in from Wichita, which is obviously the one that eventually ended up getting hit and resulted in 67 people getting killed. Now, whether or not the DEI is part of this specific case, we don't know. We have no idea. But obviously it was a main part of the press conference from the president last night or yesterday afternoon. And I thought it was a totally missed opportunity. That's what it turned into, a missed opportunity to, in that moment, hours after this tragedy happened, do one thing and one thing only. Show empathy, tell Americans it's going to be okay, tell Americans they will be safe when they fly. That's a huge thing, just like after 9/11. But anytime you get something like this, Americans get spooked for a period of time. I'm sure you've had these conversations with people in your family. I have as well, where you're like, could have been me, could have been us. We fly a lot. Like, we don't have family in the area. We do a lot of flying. And with 3 little kids, it's a lot of work, but you do it, right? So as someone who gets on those airplanes quite frequently, yeah, there's a part of you, it's just human nature, that says, well, could have been me. How many of you that travel to Washington, D.C. for political work think, gosh, I've flown into Reagan dozens of times. I've done that route. I've been over the Potomac, and you're like, wow, it's beautiful. Look at the Capitol building. Like, we've all done it, or a lot of us have done it. So you have that moment. And to me, yesterday, all you focus on is empathy. You show leadership, and you say, this is still, first off, the greatest country in the history of mankind. And we have the safest airspace in the history of mankind. Instead, there was a different approach. The president decided to go down the road of DEI, and then the knives were out from the media because this was the gift that was put on a silver platter for him.
Mr. President, on DEI and the claims that you've made, are you saying this crash was somehow caused and the result of diversity hiring? And what evidence have you seen to support these claims?
It just could have been. We have a high standard. We've had a much higher standard than anybody else. And there are things where you have to go by brain power. You have to go by psychological quality. And psychological quality is a very important element of it. These are various very powerful tests that we put to use, and they were terminated by Biden. And Biden went by a standard that's the exact opposite. So we don't know.
We're talking about something when we don't even know if that's like the thing to blame. Now, if you want to say that DEI hiring has led to a shortage in air traffic controllers, therefore, airspace in general is not as safe as it needs to be because we're more focused on race and gender and sexual orientation, that's a more complex conversation that certainly is worth having. Do I think 18 hours, not even really 15 hours into this tragedy, when families haven't even been told if they've lost their loved ones, they're still dragging bodies out of the Potomac River, is that the time for it? No, it's not. And if you say, well, when's the good time for it? You know when the good time for it is? When you have the facts to back up that is in part what caused this tragedy. That's the good time for it. Because it may turn out that these issues have absolutely nothing to do with what happened. We know right now that the air traffic controller told the helicopter, hey, you got an incoming plane. Watch out. Helicopter says back, got it, all good. Even if that air traffic controller is doing the job of 2 people at that point in time, where are you going to look to that unfolding and say this is the result of DEI hiring, DEI training, whatever it might be? Well, I believe it's an issue at every level of government, and I believe in only merit-based hiring. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what your skin color is, who you want to sleep with. I don't care about any of that. I want the best people for the job, whether it's in the government or here at KCMO Talk Radio. That's it. But the evidence better be there. And then when the evidence is there, you bring it up as part of a broader conversation after the tragedy has been finalized. It was just cringy to watch it. And here's where I think Trump's got to be careful. He is more popular than he's ever been in the White House. You look at his approval numbers. They were never this high during his first 4 years in office. He has the wind to his back. And you know and I know the media wants to stop that. And they will do everything in their power to stop that. And for people who didn't watch the press conference yesterday, they're just catching the highlights. They're just seeing some of the social media stuff. Maybe they're still watching, nightly news, which who the heck is still doing that? But I guess some people are. That's where you got to be one step ahead of them. Erin's in Liberty on KCMO. Hi, Erin. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. I just had something small to think, and I know I've heard all these different social media outlets and what they think about Trump's response. I just wanted to add, the reason why we hired Trump to do this job is because of his transparency. And unfortunately, where people say it was a little too soon, Trump is about transparency in the moment, and he came out and said to people what's going on, what his thoughts are, and that should be appreciative in every subject. Sometimes it's not great, but his transparency is what we love about him. And that's all I was just going to add.
Yeah, no, thank you, Erin. I appreciate that. I'm all about it, too. I think the transparency less than 2 weeks in has been tremendous. But I want the transparency when the facts back it up. I mean, there was no transparency. He was asked, hey, how do you know that DEI is something that is part of the equation here? He said, well, it could have been. That's just, at that point, an opinion. There's no real transparency there, right? I mean, I totally agree in that I like the way that it looks like Kash Patel is going to handle FBI stuff. They're going to have more transparency at every level of government. There's actually going to be somebody in the White House that is cognizant of what's going on and talks to the media.
Come on, man.
And all that stuff is true. But there really wasn't any transparency yesterday, right? It's not like he said, hey, something's going to come out. I know things that I will share with you that will confirm that our failures with DEI hiring help lead to this. He didn't say that. That would have been transparent. It was just well, it could have been. Is that really transparent? 913-408-7957. That's our studio line and our text line on KCMO Talk Radio. And that's, I think, the part of this that needs to be brought up or at least just talked about. I mean, listen, I voted for the guy 3 times. No one's sitting here saying they regret it. I just want to make sure he's protecting himself because he's got the wind to his back. He's got it in a way he's never had it in office. I want to make sure he maintains it. And don't give your political enemies, including the media, something to run with. Don't do it until you've got that data. And if he's 2 steps ahead of us, give me a kernel. Give me something to work with here, right? You'll find out that I'm right on this. 913-408-7957. So here's the question. It's really a simple one. What's the thing to do and what's the way to handle? Yesterday, you're standing there at the podium. We've got potentially dozens of Kansans dead, and we've got 67 people who have lost their lives. And while we know there are major issues within the way the government hires, within the way the FAA operates, what do you want in that moment from your leadership? It's really a simple question. That's it. It doesn't mean anyone's sitting there saying, bring back Grandpa. No one's saying that, right? That's not what's going on here. Let's be very clear about this. There's none of that happening. Hope Pops is having a good time somewhere on the beach in Delaware. It's keeping the wind to your back and not giving the political people that want to see you fail any kind of ammunition. That's it. Paul's in Kansas City. What's happening, Paul?
Hey, Pete, yeah, I agree with you. It wasn't polished. What I would have focused on if I was the president, and Secretary of Transportation Duffy knew this, they only had 19 of 30 requirements on staff that night. So you were down a delta of almost 4 people, or 40% of your staffing. And I would have, if I was the president, I would have said, we owe the American people an answer why there was only 19 of 30 qualified, trained air traffic controllers on duty that night. We owe you an answer. And whatever it comes, the reason why we only have that hiring practices, DEI, we'll get you an answer. That's what I would have done.
That's a good point, Paul, because you're right. Everybody can get behind that. And you can say, we are running $1.8 trillion deficits, and we can't fully staff air traffic controllers in this country.
Stunning. When I saw that 19 at 30, I was like,
that's
it ain't business you've been in.
And that's those are facts you can latch onto, and you can say, this is indisputable. It is a massive problem in this country. It's been going on for too long. If you want to take a pot shot at the prior guy and say he let this go on, you know what, whatever. That's fine. I know that Trump's going to punch back. I'm cool with that. I mean, that's who he is. There's good and bad with
New
that.
Yorker.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. That's fine. But you've got a hard data point to latch onto there. That's worth something, my man. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, and one final thing is he should have said, we owe the American people answers, because we want answers. We want to know why we lost 64 of our countrymen. And that's how I would have phrased it. We owe you an answer, and we will get you the answer.
Mm-hmm. That's well said, Paul. Thank you very much, my man.
Thank you, bro.
Appreciate it. Kevin, Overland Park, go ahead. You're on KCMO.
Hey, Pete. Hey, I was agreeing with what you're saying there as far as how Trump handled it. You know, I like Trump. I voted for him as well. And I listened to Pete Hegseth being interviewed this morning on Fox, and they were talking about the same thing for a little bit. And, you know, he first, expressed his condolences and grieving and all that. But then he said, we're going to lean in. We're going to be transparent. We'll get to the bottom of this. I mean, he didn't offer opinion, nor did he slam anybody or anything like that. It was more of a, better way of handling it. I thought Sean Duffy did a great job at the podium as well. So.
Sean Duffy, I'm with you there, Kevin. Thanks, man. Hegseth has impressed me thus far in his approach. Same thing with Sean Duffy. And I'll tell you what, as I'm watching these confirmation hearings as well, there's a theme with a lot of these people, and it's that they've done a lot of media and or have experience working in media. And that has put some of the critics on the left side of the aisle on their heels. And it has been really, really effective to watch that unfold. Kash Patel does a lot of media, had a podcast, the whole thing. We know about Pete Hegseth, hosting Fox and Friends. Sean Duffy has also done a lot of media, Fox and Friends radio, different things on Fox. You see these guys, and listen, I'm not sitting here saying what we do is digging ditches or brain surgery or anything like that. We're blessed to do what we do. But there's something about whether it's doing this for a living, television, I say to a lesser extent because it's very scripted, but you are thinking on your toes and you are able to throw zingers back and one-liners back at some of these goobers in the Senate who are like, I'm going to get you on this one. No, you're not, buddy. Kash Patel has had great moments like that over the last couple of days. Rick in Lafayette County, you got the last word, my man. Make it quick.
Hey, Pete, I couldn't agree with you more on that deal with Damn, I hate this. But, yeah.
What do you hate? What do you hate now? Did I put you in too much pressure there, telling you got 20 seconds?
Hey, the Border Patrol was horse reins whipping people, and Waukesha, the kid shot somebody in self-defense. Biden was so quick to jump on that. I saw red. He immediately condemned both of those people, and there was other instances, too, during his presidency where he immediately condemned before he had any information whatsoever almost, and it just ticked me off so bad, and I'm still 100% behind Trump, but I wished he hadn't went down that route.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. Thank you very much there, Rick. Appreciate it. I think he got nervous when I put him on the spot. I shouldn't do that to the caller. That's unfair to do. You got 20 seconds. Go. Nah, Rick recovered very nicely.
Starting now?
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. 913-408-7957.